Welcome to Wizard Team, a Black magical podcast for Black magical stories.
Hi everyone, it's Bayana, Robyn, and Porshèa embarking on a journey through the many fantasy stories written by and about Black people. Currently, we're reading Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston, and today we're discussing Chapter 22.
So, what did we cover last episode? For one, Amari's had it. She's over it, she's tired, she's through. Stick a fork in her, she's done. She's been hate crimed, yelled out of there. She's just like, I gotta go home. I gotta get pulled together. And thankfully, her bestie Elsie has the car ready for her to hop in and take her straight back home so where she can just decompress for a minute and be away from these hate-filled people. But while Mari is initially apprehensive about Elsie seeing her house because she doesn't want Elsie to judge her wrongly, and her and Elsie therefore have issues in their relationship, she's pleasantly surprised by Elsie's response to seeing where Amari lives and also Quentin, her idol. But also calls Amari her bestie for the first time, and it's a very cute and special moment up until Maxwell decides to let them both know that Elsie's guardian does not see it for her being in Amari's neighborhood. Was that necessary for him to share? No. But did he do it? Yes. And that's why I currently have a vendetta against Maxwell. Meanwhile, this whole time this is probably happening, this whole conversation in Amari's house, who's probably sneaking in with their overeager ears using tech magic? Not one, but only Magician Girl 18, aka Dylan, who decides to suddenly starts talking using Amari's TV screen in her living room. We don't know how long he was there. We don't know all that he heard. I assume it was everything.
This is why they like to monitor
And
kids' screen time. I'm telling you. That's why. You might have a magician in your TV.
I just need the violation, just the level of violation to just be somewhere uninvited. Someone has not answered any of your calls or texts or messages that you sent them since they have left their the scene of a crime. And as soon as Amari can have a moment to herself, she can't have that moment. That moment is stolen by the invader named Dylan. So as you have you heard last episode, then you know how great a besmirchment of social protocol and etiquette that is. And the lack of decorum alone exceeds what is allowable for Dylan being considered a friend in this moment for Amari. He even goes even further, already in violation mode, just takes it up, just goes even further. Why? Because he can. By trying to tell Amari that oh, I see that you mastered, and mastery is what mastery is this? Amari finally came through and was successfully able to complete a magical spell called Solace, where she could uh bring in blinding sunlight on her own. However, instead of being oh, let's page through a couple more spells, Amari, or let's see how long you can sustain this light, Amari, Dylan instead says, let's flip all the way to the end of this fair magic section and let's go straight into the foul magic. And the first spell we're going to encounter here is how to lurk in people's fears and miseries and make them miserable. That's what we're going to do today. Amari immediately refuses because that's our girl. We all know what she's made of. We all know what she's willing and willing not to do. And when Dylan tries to sell it to her as learning defense, she's like, no. I don't play defense that way. I'm a fair magic person, not a foul magic person, and you're reading me completely wrong. Dylan tries to make it up to her by taking her to his secret lair in the spare Van Helsing Lake House. I'm guessing there are multiple. And he shows Amari his magical world. He has an Aladdin moment, instead of a magic carpet ride, it's a transport teleportation to the lake house basement. Um, and instead of any like regular 12-year-old guy's basement, he has a painted woodland forest with lurking magical creatures and sights and smells that feel like you're actually in the forest. And then he just tells Amari how special she is, and even credits the special flower that Amari makes, the Amari blossom, because he's that caring of a person and not at all scary or someone you should be concerned about interacting directly with you after
Oh my
violating
god.
both your space, peace, and your will.
So into chapter
I feel like
22.
we know clearly how Porshèa feels about Dylan in that recap. I think we got a good sense. Yeah? No? All right. Let's get into it.
So Amari transports back home and hears voices in the living room. She finds a detective talking to her mom. Her mom sits on the opposite side of the room with her head down. Amari pushes Dylan away, is like, you gotta go. And Dylan is like, okay, but asks if he's going to have a partner on Monday, which Amari is still not really convinced to return to the Bureau yet, but is like, but you got to get out now because we got a detective in here and my mama don't know you here. You can't do this. So Dylan leaves. Amari closes her eyes, leaves her head against the wall. But then she's trying to figure out like, why is her mom home so early? Why did the police call her? Did they find something? She decides to eavesdrop instead of just going inside, which,
As you do.
I
I
guess.
mean, to be fair,
Yeah.
if Amari's mama knew she was home, she wouldn't be able to get the info that she wants to have right now.
I mean, not with I feel like she would, with the detective is there to, I don't think the conversation would stop, but maybe. I don't
I
know.
think he would
I feel
hopefully be a
like
little bit more
it's also,
what do you call it? Tactful.
careful with the words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A less accusatory, maybe.
Yeah. So the detective says, I know it's not what you wanted to hear, but please don't think we're giving up on Quentin. We're simply out of leads at this point. Our detectives have to move on to new cases. Rest assured, if anything new comes in, we'll be right back on your son's case. So basically, they're giving up at this point, and they're just coming to tell her
It's a
that
cold case.
they are no longer going to be looking into Quentin's disappearance. Mama nods and says, I understand. She looks so small, bunched up on the couch like that, so defeated. Amari hates it. The detective leans back and then decides to give his 2 cents to be like, I've worked down here for 20 years. I've seen it before. A son gets tired of seeing his mother struggle, decides to do something about it, starts to participate in activities that ain't exactly on the up and up. He don't want his mom to be disappointed in him, so he keeps it under wraps, claims he got a job. You see where I'm going with this? And so basically, like, insinuating that Quentin was in a gang or up to some other,
Nefarious and criminal, illegal
shady,
activities.
yeah. And Mama's like, I do, but I told you Quentin was working. And he's like, ever been to this job, seen a paycheck or even a check stub? At this point, like, so basically he's like making Mama Peters kind of question what she had been told by Quentin. Amari at that point is over it. She stomps into the room and says, leave her alone. Obviously Mom's is surprised that Amari's even there in the first place because for all she knew, she was still at the Bureau. So Amari looks at the detective and is like, she already answered your questions, so just go. And the detective says, I know this ain't easy, especially coming from somebody like me. Amari's like, I don't care. You can't come in here and say stuff like that when you don't know. You can't assume what my brother is like just because of where we're from. Quentin is a good person, the best person, and I'm not going to let you just say what you want about him. I just, at this point, she's she's just fed up, which makes sense. Like all these people
Mhm.
have been doubting her, pushing at her, and I think that this is like maybe the one moment she can really like she has like an outlet, you know what I mean, for her anger.
And it's, like, justified.
And it's justified, and it's in defending someone else. It's not about defending herself too, because the main reason the detective was definitely push it. Like he could have just said, like she said, like you said what you need to say, you can go. Right? It doesn't have to be, oh, let's push and say more bad things about Quentin to make moms feel like she needs to give up on her son.
I think, and this is, like, difficult, but I do think that the detective thinks that he's doing a mercy because he believes that he like, in taking away Mama Peter's hope that she could start to, like, move towards closure, like, you may not have we may not have a body, we may not have, like, answers, but, like, you need to start to, like, grieve your son, he's not coming back, you know? And I think when people talk about, you know me, I love me some procedurals and crime dramas, like, it's I don't do true crime because that's too close, but, like, they do talk about, like, the not knowing is, like, one of the harder things to get over because you feel guilty if you start to grieve, right? Like, you feel like it feels like you're then giving up on them, but then you also feel stuck, because you run out of leads, you run out of kind of whatever, and so I do think that, like, Amari feels much more and we see this, like, the way that Renee Peters, Mama Peters, like, reacts afterwards. You feel Amari feels much more confident because she knows more than Mama Peters does, or even the detective. Like, she knows that Quentin's alive and that Quentin is being held. You know what I mean? So she does have something to go on. She doesn't know where he is or like the um level of danger, but she knows that like someone is trying to like negotiate an exchange. So obviously he's alive to some extent or whatever. Um and so it feels a little bit like the detective very much leaning on stereotypes and leaning on I mean this is also why like police ain't they don't solve crime. They just they push paperwork. But is trying to kind of one justify the fact that they're not going to spend any more time or resources looking for him, but two, um, not be creative and like tracking. I mean, I would love to see the story in which like a really like scrappy detective who is hell bent on finding Quentin stumbles upon the bureau because he was doing his job. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
so I don't know. I just think that it's like this sucks. He's wrong, but could believe that he's doing it for good reasons.
What this brought up for me ties off of the last chapter of the where of it all being a component, like the neighborhood that Amari and Quentin are from, and how many misgivings Amari has about people who are from outside this community coming into it, and like whether they're people that she really hopes will to take away good things from like being part of seeing her community, like Elsie, or people that like this detective that like tends to, like she knows already has an idea of what he believes coming from this community, given how he layers what I expect, what we've seen before in similar cases into this, the where of it all, and the like there's like a placement of like responsibility of the where of this neighborhood on the people and what happens to the people within the neighborhood without it actually being interrogated, like why that is so false and why it's so wrong. And that's why it really stuck me in my crawl whenever Dylan Addergirled Amari for being able to overcome where she's from and like all that. Like it really did stick with me because here she is, and she's like, my brother is just like is what my brother is like just because of where we're from. Like he's being judged because of where we're from. And um it's a thing about like keeping her in this like place, like it's like in spite of what she's overcoming to like be part of these like what both her and Quentin are doing to overcome where they're from. It's part of this like white normative narrative of like, if you lived in the burbs or whatever, then we would expect more for you, and you're only doing your best because you're from a bad neighborhood, and how we feel so sad. But a normative area that we understand, like that wouldn't be so bad, but they would still like Robyn talked about this in the past about like for you and um how people, when you, I believe it was in Anaheim, while people misjudged you because you were Black, and they wanted to say that like, oh, like you were doing good because of like your background, and it's like, but what is my background? Like, are you serious? Like, why are you trying to like use your like perception of what my background is to tell a story of me? And that's what they're doing with Amari, saying that like in Quentin, in spite of where you're from, like you're doing your best because of where you're from. And I think that there's a level of like discrimination that keeps happening there. And for me to see Amari push back against that, I think it's also attuned not only to her sticking up for someone other than herself, but that people other than herself, or it's not just Quentin, it's her community, it's those people where she's from. And she's tired of having this feeling of should be ashamed of where she's from when she really shouldn't. And the people who are making her feel ashamed or trying to make her feel ashamed about where she's from are the people from Jefferson Academy, are the Lauras, are Elsie's guardian and stuff like that. So it's very like validating that that's the thing, that community is the thing that pushes Amari over the edge, like sticking up for community. But at the same time, it's like super frustrating to see that she's like thrusting herself back into danger because she wants to like hold down all the things that she wants to represent in a way that is true to like these people's lives and her life, rather than letting like this like white normative lens tell her what she should be doing or how things should be, and telling the story for her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lack of doing the work. I was about to say like creativity, but like it's also creativity, right? It's like the systems and these like police and everything they've told themselves. And that's not to say that it's not based in something, right? They've seen this story before. You know what I mean? Is what they say. I've seen this before. We've seen this before. I see it all the time. And it's like, yeah, you might see that. That might be a story. That is one possibility, but it's not the only one. And if you did your job and followed leads and you know what I mean? And like, yes, Quentin is a part of a secretive underground network of things.
And
So,
then, and to be
you know,
fair, the
Right.
detective could have his memory wiped. Like
right.
he might have
He
tried to
could.
Right.
investigate, and they might have
And
wiped his
also,
memory.
it's also a cold, like it is a cold
It's a
case
cold case.
technically.
It's a cold case
Like
in the
there's really nothing they
supernatural
can't do.
world too. But it's like I think the thing is just it.
Well, it's not a cold case in the supernatural world. They know where he is. They just can't do nothing
Yeah.
about it
Um.
or know who has.
They know who hasn't. But like I think what I'm saying is like the what I in the cop trying to like do a mercy or whatever, what would have actually been truer, and more impactful. Not I don't know if impactful is the right word, but whatever. What would have been truer is we have run out of leads and we can no longer justify like this level of resources and like it sucks and I'm sorry and if we like you said if I find anything else like but he should have just left it there because you know
Yeah, you didn't have to because that's not actually comforting
yeah
to go further than that.
I mean I think he
Like
thinks he's being
I'm not worth the resource. Like Quentin is not worth the resource. That's telling a story about who's worthy and who's not worth the
no, I
resource.
don't think it's that. Like, I think that you can kind of understand. Like, there's a even with like people that you love that are in the hospital or stuff like that. There's like, or I had to do this with Luna. I'm gonna cry, but like when she got hurt, there is like a moment where you have to say like, if the fix or whatever is like this much, then it's not, and like the reward, right? Like with Luna, it was like this is all that she has to do. Like, this is how much the surgery is going to cost. This is how long and how much like rehab is going to be. And if there's a but there is like a tipping point where they're like, if she's able to do X after surgery, then there's a better prognosis. But if she's not able to X, which was like go to the bathroom on her own, like her quality of life is only going to be so much. And it's really awful, but like people do have to make those, the return on like the investment that we're putting into this is not.
I mean, I don't think that you can have that conversation without talking about the inherent,
No, yeah.
like the isms behind that, right? Because like if you're talking about a human being, that would be ableist to be like, oh, well, her quality of like talking about someone's quality of life and like being not worth the like living based on like
But humans do that. I mean, hopefully the difference is that the human has the most agency and decides makes that decision for themselves. That's the difference, right? But like in all of these things, like you do have to. I mean, that's the thing with like even with the bureau, they're making the assumption like, do you negotiate with terrorists? Basically, is saving 2 lives worth the potential of unleashing whatever on the rest of the supernatural world? So I think that part to me is like it stinks, but it makes a little bit. I understand the thought process behind it. The problem comes when, in trying to comfort someone, you push forward a narrative that is not true, or that you don't know
and
is
that you
true.
can't know.
You know what I mean? Like, and trying to say like I see it all the time. He got caught up in something. It pushes that responsibility or like Quentin did something, and
the
yeah,
victim,
the
blaming the
victim is
victim.
in some way at fault for his victimhood, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And that's page 1.
So the detective leaves. He's like, wasn't my intention to start trouble. Amari slams the door shut behind him. Mama covers her face crying. Amari goes over and takes a seat beside her and says, I meant what I said. You should hear the kinds of things they say about Quentin. But Mama just shakes her head and says, what Quentin did in that leadership camp doesn't matter. And so Amari at this point is like considering whether to tell her mom the truth and how.
Tell her. This is
But she's kind of like, how do I tell her without it sounding like I'm making it up? And then 2, if I like the easiest way to do it would be to show her a spell, but then she'd freak out. And then on top of that, like, how would the bureau react if they find out that I showed my mom magic? You know what I mean? Like, would we then both get in trouble? Of what would happen there? So she's just feeling like she has to do something. Mama reprimands her for blowing up a detective like that, saying that he was just trying to help. And Amari's like, but he was wrong about Quentin. You know that. I don't know that, says Mama, her voice harsh. I have no idea what Quentin was doing. For all we know, he got caught up in some mess, as so many of the young men from around here. And so Amari at that point is like in shock, because at this point it's kind of been the 2 of them together and like not believing what all these other people are saying about what happened to him. But Mama gets up and she goes to her bedroom. Amari realizes she's crying, but because she's mad at whoever's keeping Quentin away from them, at herself for becoming so scared that she considered giving up on her brother. She says, I've got to be stronger than I've been. No matter how bad those other kids make me feel, nothing's worse than seeing Mama hurt like this. I've got to bring Quentin home, if only to prove to Mama that her son is everything she always thought him to be and more. So we back in. She's like, this is what we're not about to do.
And this I feel like our tagline should be like, when I don't know what chapter it was, but like Bayana was like, Amari fights. Like I just every time I like, I just feel I'm like, Amari a fighter, I understand like all of the like questions and reasons that Amari has and, like, concerns that she has about telling her mom the truth, but I do wish she would have been like, "I'm telling her the truth," and then the question is, like, "How do I do it? How do I get her to believe me? And how do I get her t how do I do it where the bureau doesn't know or, wipe our memories or whatever, you know?" I wish that she
Yeah,
would have just been, like, with conviction, like, "I need to share this with my mom,
tell
tell
her.
her." Because
Yeah.
it is, like, at a certain point, and I don't mean like, I don't think that Mama Peters actually believes it, but I think at a certain point, it's just easier to at least have a
Mhm.
story that gives you some sort of closure, you know?
Yeah.
Even if it feels, like, just wrong in your gut or whatever, but it's like, if I can convince myself to believe this, I can then have that, like I can start to grieve. I can have that chapter
Mhm.
close and then, like, do something else because I think, like Amari says or Mama Peter says, like, Amari's in the beginning of this book is stuck, right?
Mhm.
And I don't think that we think about the fact that she's stuck as well, and so, yeah, I wish that this was the moment in which and also it's just, like, it's nice to not, like, it was Amari and her mom against the world, basically, in their belief in Quentin, in their, like, pursuit of figuring out what's happening, and, like, um, now this is another way in which Amari is isolated and, like, isolated from her mom, um, it's just, like, awful.
Yeah. I mean, I also do I guess I get, like, not wanting to risk it because at this point, she's coming back to the idea that, like, she is gonna
Find him.
try to find Quentin, so I do also get, like, not wanting to risk, like, not knowing what the Bureau was gonna do or, like, how they would find out or whether they'd find out or when or whatever,
Or even how her mom would react, like, her mom might forbid her to going back to the bureau because, like, she already lost one baby to the bureau, what you gonna
Right.
do if the
Right.
other one gets lost?
Yeah. So it's tricky, but I like yeah, it's tricky.
As you know, BNC is a collective of nerds. While we can only make so much content in a year, we still have so many shows, books, games, and other media we want to discuss.
That's where our fandom functions come in. Once a month, members of the collective come together to discuss a fun, nerdy topic with our BNC baddies.
Want to hang out with us and talk about topics spanning from Star Trek to anime? Support us on Patreon at any tier by going to patreon.com/blacknerdscreate, and you can get access to our fandom functions.
This episode is brought to you by Tic Tac. Close your eyes and take a ride with new Tic Tac Citrus Adventure. Awaken your senses with harmonies of sour and tangy fruit flavors. Picture the vibrant trio of mandarin, lemon, and lime as each flavor mingles to create a refreshing symphony. Pick up a pack and dive into new Tic Tac Citrus Adventure. Visit @TicTacUSA on social to share the good vibes.
So after eating a hot pocket, Amari irons her mom's work uniform and hangs it on her doorknob. She seems to be asleep, and so Amari is just kind of, taking care of her in the ways that she
I want a
can.
mini bench, Mama
Um,
Peters. It's not a real bench. She's not gonna be benched for the chapter, but I want, like, a bench for this. Can we stop buying this child hot pocket? Just, there's gotta be something else.
yeah,
I don't know, I just feel like it's like a
I
Costco
know, but there's
level
gotta be
size
yeah,
something
box of
because
else.
like
Hot
it's
Pockets
in the
in there,
freezer
and
My
she
and
just
mama
you
keeps
buys
just
eating
these
it.
things at Costco. They're like these, like, noodle bowls, and you put I mean, it's gross. We've decided that you have to put, like, broth in it, but, like, you put water in it, cup of noodles or whatever, and the salt content is not that high. I understand it. I really do. But there is just a level of, like, nutritional and physical violence that comes with a Hot Pocket. Have you ever eaten a Hot Pocket? It goes two ways. You
you
burn
are
the crap
also
out
a
of
food
yourself,
snob.
or it's frozen
Yeah.
on the inside.
I just think that, like, I hear you. However, this is like, it sounds like a comfort food of sorts as well for Amari. It's like something she
Can we
knows
get
is
her some
in the house that she
Uncrustables?
can eat on her own.
Not
Un-
Uncrustables,
I don't know if
please.
Uncrustables are any better as food content than Hot Pockets are.
No, not even a little bit. I think Robyn's just talking about her own taste.
I'm hearing her say I had a Hot Pocket, and my mouth is burning in sympathy and or disgust, because it literally one of two ways: you burn the shit out of yourself, or it's frozen on the inside. Hate that for her.
They didn't get the math right on the temperatures. So yeah, Amari's still frustrated, so she knows she's not gonna be able to sleep anytime soon. So she grabs her phone, plugs in her earbuds, and goes up to the roof. She takes a seat right at the edge of the roof and lets her feet dangle over the side, which, like, no thank you. Please back up. She can hear Quentin and Mama's voices telling her to come back where it's safer. As they should, because that's terrifying. But it feels good to not listen for once, to be scared of something and do it anyway. If I'm going back to the bureau, this is good practice. And I just feel like this is a false equivalency. You know?
I feel like the recklessness that Robyn talked about for Dylan has rubbed off into
A little
Amari right
bit.
now, where she's like, you know what?
Been a little reckless, but oh my
Yes.
gosh.
Yes,
like,
but I feel like in this moment,
please.
it's like she just came back from being reckless with Dylan. She's like, you know what? Let's just keep that energy going. Let's just keep it going.
Back up. You could literally cross your legs. Like, just back up a couple inches. You're still on the edge. You can still see everything light touches or whatever. But like, why? Why?
Why are we risking lives?
Like, for no
Life
reason.
and limbs.
So but then Jaden shows up on the roof. He says that his mom's new boyfriend doesn't like having him around, so he comes up to the roof until they fall asleep. Which
then go home. Mama's new boyfriend. Go to your own place.
If you don't like, come on. And kick him out,
Jaden's story just keeps getting sadder and sadder every time we hear from him. And I just feel like I just need someone else to look out for this kid outside of the boys that he hangs around with. And it's so sad that those are the people who are looking out for him the most, that he thinks are looking out for him the most, outside of Quentin, whenever Quentin was around.
Yeah. Because, like, nobody's is really... Yeah, nobody is watching or caring for him.
Like,
not
he has
nobody,
Dylan's problem,
but,
except for he doesn't have Dylan's privilege.
Not enough people, and no close enough
people
to change his circumstances.
Right.
He has Dylan's problem without Dylan's privilege. Like, he doesn't have the safety net of Dylan. He doesn't have the ability to just grab things and teleport to wherever he wants to go in the world that happens to be a lake house. Like, he doesn't have any of the privileges that Dylan can exhibit, while also being, like, on his devil may care if my parents don't care where I am. Like, he can't do that.
Right. So he asks about Amari, is like, I thought you were out doing fancy kid stuff. Amari laughs and is like, trust me, there's nothing fancy about Amari Peters. And Jaden's like, yeah, right, you're practically a legend in the wood. People in the neighborhood love them some Peters, and not just your brother either, you too. We all think you're going to be president or something. Amari says, no, they talk about me because of my brother. There's a big difference. I'm not good at everything like he is. So again, just that, like, comparing herself to Quentin and being, like, the only person who expects her, or I guess thinking that other people expect her to be like him as opposed to just, like, to be herself. So Jaden's like, so you didn't get all the school awards back in elementary school, and I guess they just give anybody a scholarship to those rich kids' schools, huh? Be quiet.
Tell her, Jaden.
He said, okay, we're not going to
tell her about herself.
That humility that you're trying to play up, like you trying to act like you real humble, like you ain't got nothing to make you sound like you're special outside of your brother. Let's squash that real quick.
Let's interrogate this. Let's think a little deeper. And then he
Jaden
says, "I
talking
get
about
it though. It can't
therapists.
be easy having."
I don't like it.
He says, "Can't be easy to have Quentin Peters as your brother. It's like being the second best basketball player in the whole world, but your brother is the best. You'd grow up losing all the time and thinking you suck, but everybody else, the people watching, we see you pulling off moves we only wish we could. We able to see how great you are."
Words of
I love this
affirmation.
kid.
He said,
I love this
I heard
kid.
Dylan was trying that quiet storm. Dylan was throwing some game, but let me show you what I'm working with. Okay?
Dylan was playing on that resilience. He's a strong black woman crap. F all of that. Let me tell you about who you
Jaden
actually
said,
are.
you've been hanging out with a scrub, get with a pro.
I can't.
Woo.
So Amari opens her mouth, but is rightfully speechless. Like, what do you say to that? But then Jaden's phone rings. His whole expression sours. He sighs as he gets to his feet. "I'm trying to get myself out of the wood, boys. I really am," he says. "You and Quentin will still help me when I do, right?" Amari nods, says definitely. Jaden grins and nods too, then disappears down the stairwell.
The
Jaden's words
man,
stay.
the mystery, the enigma of
Yeah.
Jaden. He shows up when you need him and then he disappears
dips.
right
He's
before you
like,
get your words
"Mhm,
together.
I'm
Leaves you
out."
breathless.
Um, so Jaden's words stay on the roof with me. "I have always compared myself to Quentin. I never felt like I measured up. My brother is good at everything without even trying. Because that's his supernatural ability, I realize. Quentin has super genius aptitude. Director Van Helsing said it gives him the ability to learn anything with ease." So now she's suddenly like, "Oh, I've been comparing myself to my brother's supernatural ability. That's why I've been falling short." Like, I like the...
Sorry, go ahead.
I like that she
Recognition.
finally has that realization of like, hold up. And I like, even if, and my thing is like, even if she hadn't been comparing herself to his supernatural abilities, like, it still isn't necessary to compare herself, period, because like, you're different people. And you shouldn't
There's no right
expect
way to
yourself
live
or push
life.
yourself. Yeah, and you
Mhm.
shouldn't
Yeah.
push yourself to be exactly the same and accomplish the exact same things as someone else. But I do think that in this case, especially like for her in this moment and given everything else going on, I think that that was like the right thing to kind of jolt her out of it, I
I was
guess.
also thinking about, so Quentin is 10 years older than her. We don't know when Quentin did his like amazing feat or whatever to get his like, so she gets invited like I think the first year she's eligible, right? That may not be true for Quentin because he
Hmm.
was a merit based person, so he like did something, right?
Well, she's married too.
No, she's a legacy, but they were like,
Oh yeah, she's legacy,
but
right, because she got nominated.
yeah,
You're right.
but
You're right.
like
You're right.
Laura's like,
Mhm.
you legacy by one generation, that don't count. You knew money.
Mhm.
Not even one
Yeah.
generation. The same generation.
When
It's just
yeah.
different.
But
Yeah.
like I was thinking about, she may never have known Quentin without his supernatural ability.
Without his supernatural. True. That's super
If
true.
But to
he
be
did
fair,
if
at
he
the
did
same
his whatever at 12, let's say 12, she was 2 years old when he became
Hmm.
supernatural. If
Right.
16, because we know that, like, by the time he's in school, like, he's 22 at this point, I think. Like, she's
Hmm.
6.
And 18 is the last
Yeah.
eligibility.
So,
Yeah.
15, 16, 17, 18, at the most, she's 8 years old. And that is still, you know what I
But
mean?
he had definitely been there a little bit longer than
Right.
that too. So like, yeah.
So she, like, literally has, like,
they
not even, she doesn't really know who Quentin is without his supernatural ability.
but is
Mhm.
Quentin someone else without his ability though? Like he was able to like show up on the
Right, like,
radar and be part of the
he was
bureau
impressive, right. I don't
without.
think that, I mean, it's a matter of degrees, right? And I don't think that at whatever age Amari was, like, I think maybe to like Mama Peters, she might think like, oh yeah, at like 18 or something, like he really came into himself, or you know what I mean? Like when you have that like glow up thing where it's just like it's a little like you've always had that thing, but then like something happens and like the light changes and like, oh, you get the haircut and the line up, the shape up did something. You know what I mean? Like you nothing fundamental change, but there's always like that little like, oh, he learned how to, wear his, wardrobe or what he found his personal style. Like to Mama Peters, that might be what his
Right.
supernatural unlocking is, but to Amari, it would it because it's such a small, like kind of shifty thing, it probably wouldn't have registered to her as like a before and after, because at the most she's 8.
But also, like, I
Right.
feel like there's 2 things here. One is that, Amari, like, holds Quentin up on a pedestal no matter what because he's her older brother who looks out for her, and the most, like, poignant thing she can think of whenever she sees her picture of him and her together in his office is what he did for her on a very crappy year of birthday and Christmas. So it's not even
Yeah.
about what she holds dear about him, and is the most aspirational for is being like him in kindness, I think, and like that kind of likeliness is where she's like she does compare herself on all the aptitude and successful measures, but she's also like she treasures the most things about him that no one else could have with him in a relationship. So I think that also colors how highly she regards him, and she has like breaking it down this way does really help her kind of negate some of the things that she's been like attributing to him. Like, not that he doesn't deserve it, but it makes her readjust how she's compared them. Which goes to what Bayana was saying, like the how like and I was trying to figure out what the quote was and I looked it up. The like comparison is the thief of
Mhm.
joy. And the
Mm-hmm.
more that she's gonna compare herself not only to Quentin, but also to like Laura, to everyone else, it's gonna keep taking her joy from her. And it's gonna rob her of her joy to try to be like other people or like long for the same level of relationships that they have with other people for herself. Like she better off finding where she and I think the thing is that she doesn't know where she fits, so she's trying everything else on to see what might fit, and that's as we all do, especially at that age. Um, but I think it's so hard because she's at this age and she's being rejected, so she can't even actually try the things out that she needs to like really find herself. In the way that like so many other kids have the opportunity to do. And so I think that Quentin has always made that space for her where she could. He always made space for her to do what she needed to be like him. That was her safe space, her safe person. And now she's trying to navigate without that, and it's like hard because like her yardstick has been Quentin because that was the safe person to measure against.
Mm-hmm. So Amari's phone rings. She looks at the screen thinking it's Elsie, but the phone number is blocked out and the caller ID just says surprise. She's confused, thinks it's possibly Dylan, since he has tech magic. She taps to answer and says hello. At first, there's nothing, and then a robotic voice comes on the line. Enemies of magician kind, you were warned what would happen if our demands weren't met. Now suffer the consequences. The call ends. A message pops up on her screen. It's a video shot from overhead. It's footage of massive creatures sprinting across someone's lawn. And they're the hybrids. They reach a mansion, and the monsters don't break stride, bursting through the front door, shattering the wall of windows. Amari realizes that it's the Van Helsing manor. The scene changes to another mansion, then another, all overrun by hybrids.
All
It turns
mansions.
all mansions, and I think
Van
all.
Helsing
Okay,
properties. It's
is it
confu
all Van Helsing
it
properties?
looks like it seems like
Well,
it, but
probably,
we're not 100% sure.
but it's yeah. Well, yeah, it's either all Van Helsing property or at least that the Van Helsing's definitely got
Mhm.
that. Um,
So
Amari gets to her feet and opens her erg page, and then messages Dylan is like, "I just got a weird video showing your house being attacked. Are you okay?" Um, and before she can get an answer, Elsie calls and is like, "Oh my god, do you know if the Van Helsings are okay?" Um, and that's when Amari realizes that Elsie got the video too, and so did her mom and coworkers in the Department of Creature Control. Um, she thinks that it went out to the entire bureau. All right, and that's the end of the chapter. Who is the real MVP?
Jaden.
Jaden, the man
Jaden.
with the actual like history. He knows like not only with Amari, like history with Amari, but an understanding of like what Amari might respond to, what she needs to hear in a moment. And he's not trying to manipulate her into hearing it. He doesn't get anything out of it but making his friend feel better after she's tried to make him feel better about like being able to get out of something that's not good for him. So they're just looking out for each other, and that's what is friendship but looking out for each other. And I love that Jaden is the voice of friendship from her neighborhood. So she's never like as isolated as she feels, she's never without someone in her going to bat for her, like in her field for her. Like there's always someone rooting for her. Whether she's at the bureau, she has Elsie, or if she's back home and she has Jaden and her mom and everyone
Yeah,
else.
I also made Jaden my MVP, but I feel like, I'm gonna go real CBT therapy on y'all. But like there is this thing about like the narratives that you tell yourself. And for me, the reason why Jaden was MVP was like he actively challenged Amari's narrative with like proof, right? So were you or were you not winning awards? Are you or are you not getting scholarships to these schools? And like how much of that had to do with Quentin, right? Like they don't just give little sisters awards because they're somebody's little sister, right? And so when you kind of like actively combat the narrative that you tell yourself with like facts, or with like someone else, it's like very difficult. You like he kind of painted Amari into a corner to really challenge what she thought about herself. And like once you do that, it's like difficult to like unsee it, right? And I love that one because that's like what Amari can respond to well, but it's also something that like you can always go back to. Like she's going to doubt herself again. She's going to, compare herself to Quentin again. It's not like, oh, I flipped a switch and like I'll never struggle with my sense of self-worth again, but she'll always have like Jaden's voice in her head combating her own that she is not impressive. So,
Yep, I agree with what both of y'all said. Jaden's great.
Amari got some good friends. Like, there's some people in.
It's better to have one or two than a crowd of sycophants who will lay around you in
Yeah.
cots and talk about
Who,
dumb stuff. You don't even recognize that you're not even having a slumber
Yeah.
party. That's
who
how
orbit you
awful your
like the
friendship
sun,
is.
right? So like, yeah, I think
Right.
like it, we always say, I talk about like I'd rather have one or two good friends than a bunch of friends. One, because I'm not social like that, but it's also just like Amari, as far as alone as she feels and isolated as she is. I'm not gonna say that she's not isolated. She also has like she's able to make these quality relationships, and that is also a testament to her. Who is benched?
Jaden's family, his mom and her boyfriend.
Bench. They need to get out of here.
Gotta go.
I agree with that, but I actually benched the bureau, and I'm sorry that it's not one person. I mean, maybe it's Director Van Helsing. I don't know. Whoever decided that Mama Peters cannot know about the supernatural world when her son is missing and her adolescent daughter is like wrapped up in this and getting hate crimed at camp. Their bench, because I just feel like in this moment, I mean, I in all moments want her to be aware of what's going on, but like in this moment in particular, it just felt so cruel that she does not have this information. You ain't gotta tell her everything, but like, she can know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, for Jaden's family in particular, again, neglected children are always gonna have. I'm always gonna be in their corner. And there's no reason why that little boy should be on the roof and then going out with some older boys because the boyfriend is an a-hole enough to be like, oh, I don't want him to be around. Excuse me? Like, it sounds like you're trying to create a space like where
Homosexual.
you are going to do something to to whoever else is in that house, and you don't want him around to interfere with whatever you have planned. And also whatever the mother is going through where she's allowing that to be the environment that her child is in. Like, she's a victim of what the several things that could be happening there. Then I don't want to be blaming the victim, but I also don't know that that's the case. Like, I don't know what the actual case is here, but it is very like upsetting. And the fact that Jaden is such a great person, um, inspired by all the rough stuff that he's, like he's had to go through all this stuff, and he still sees the good in people despite all the bad that he could really see if he wanted to, if he wants to become that person and be like nihilistic and stuff. And I just love that that's who he chose to be, and it also has chosen to be like cool with the Peters, who also see the best in people. And I think, that's another Mark and Quentin's corner as well for, how inspirational he's been. And I also benched, just a sidebar, I also benched the police detective, because how dare you?
Thank you for listening. We will be back next week for chapter 23. Also, we have a question for you. If you were a magician and you could spin illusions to interior design your spare lake house, what would you do? What would it look like? Give us some swabs. Share your Pinterest board. Let us know.
Wizard Team is brought to you by Black Nerds Create. If you want to keep up with our other content, you can check out our website at blacknerdscreate.com. Follow us on Twitter at BLKNerdsCreate, at Yana Wrote It, at Robyn_Rambles, and at Porshèa. And you can follow us on Instagram and Tumblr at Black Nerds Create. At Black Nerds Create. Subscribe to our monthly magic newsletter, and don't forget to rate and review us. Until next time.
So long.
So long. Farewell. Auf Wiedersehen, goodbye.
To you, my friend.
Two different songs.